Hey, everybody. This is new technology. I'm trying to get fancy. Tell me if you can hear me. I think you can. And I see Fun Monster here. I don't see the Rev, the right and good Rev, but he might be joining anytime now. I spent the week going down the camera hole, just trying to figure out better ways to get my videos recorded. And I didn't think I wasn't ambitious enough this morning to think I would actually be moving to this camera approach, but I have. So I hope this all works out today. Yeah, old dog, new tricks. Trying that out. So let me know. Someone give me a shout to let me know whether or not this is actually working. It looks nice and clear. Good. See, I'm trying to do that because I put a lot of time and attention into these YouTube videos, and I don't get that much attention to them these days. Hello, happy Saturday, Shirley. And I'm glad that all right, everybody's there. Good. Yeah, so I'm working on my production values. I'm working on being more efficient at making these videos. I also am probably missing the point. I do lose about 5 to 10 subscribers a day. And I'm assuming that some of that is the people who are turned off by either how offensive I get about the Trumpists or that I'm not being civilized enough, or that I'm actually criticizing liberals for going that way. That is, I am more and more paying attention to the way, maybe I'm overexposed to liberals, but there's a way in which people who are conflict averse start talking like conflict is immoral, or that conflict is never works, that you should never confront. So I think I probably lose some people that way. Also, this whole thing about this stuff being human, that it's not exclusive to the Trumpists. I don't know. Those are guesses. So if you've got guesses about why I would be losing subscribers or not gaining them, let me know. In the meantime, I plan to be putting out more videos now that I have fussed sufficiently over cameras to have improved my look. Yeah, it's been a steep learning curve. In the meantime, talk about steep, the MAGA ABYSS is really tumbling us down it. That's certainly on my mind a lot. There's too much news to keep up with. Yes, that is certainly true. I appreciate that people have other things to go to. And yet, so that's part of the interesting challenge I face. A lot of signal is becoming noise, in that we already know that the Trumpists are hypocrites. We already know that when they do it, it's perfect, and when we do it, it's evil. The same thing, the same behavior. So that recounting of the same old news, what does it get us? I don't know. I think we're in a frustrating zone within the abyss, which is it's too late to just be talking, to be exposing them like we were. And it's too early for the French resistance. We're just kind of hoping that, for example, a rally in mid-October will make a difference. We're still really hoping for the fuck around, find out kind of a thing. Yeah, William Griffith is clutching his pearls. Oh, was that? Now, I did refer to someone as clutching pearls in a comment, a snarky comment to a Trumpist. I am pleased to see that I'm finally getting some Trumpists who are responding to the MAGA Mike videos. That was my hope all along. It wasn't just to offend liberals or to wake them up to the Trumpy moves. I was actually hoping to get Trump engagement, and I'm beginning to. For example, the good news is that I'm no longer getting 100% approval on my MAGA mics. I'm getting like 75%. So I'm grateful for that, because I want to put MAGA Mike in front of them. I did make one that I just posted a few minutes ago about how I was a middle schooler when America was great when I was a middle schooler and collected superhero and Garbage Pail Kid cards. I don't know if Garbage Pail Kid cards may be before your time, you youngsters. But anyway, yes. Okay, so let's see. I am now also further away from my screen, so I peer to see how my peers are talking to me here. Let's see. There's too much news in the news, right? So that's right. So how to follow the news smart. I need my daily dose of scornography. I'm going to be missing Jimmy Kimmel until he finds his new venue because he was great at that stuff. And I do need to keep up with the news. By now, I need the news candy coated in some irony and snark because it's too devastating otherwise. So I need that, but I also need to keep on learning. This has been a theme for me in the last couple of weeks, goes without saying, but bears repeating. I think that we got complacent because the Trumpists were such dumbasses. It's always a problem with you when your rivals are so stupid you think you don't have anything to learn. I think we have a lot to learn about how to fight more effectively with the Trumpists. It may be too late with them at the rate that the abyss is tunneling us in, but so I want to get beyond the news and how to make my site a place where one can get beyond the obvious. So you indulge in a certain amount of that kind of scornographic, glotaholic satisfaction at how stupid they are. But you don't rest there. You keep on moving and you try to figure out something else to do, something different. Because I don't think that the strategies that we had to protect ourselves from assholery are working in the current era. We're not keeping up. And it's going to be harder and harder to make the optimistic case that people are going to wake up. That's my sense of it. And that's why I'm always trying to stretch. I am not impressed with the solutions I've come up with yet. They are not good enough because I'm dealing with people who will say or do anything to avoid admitting that they're wrong about anything. And that's where the superhero cards fit in. That MAGA Mike I just put out was about a guy who simply says, whatever it is, I'm the best at it. And that's where the Trump trading cards fit in. They're so blatant and they speak so clearly to how much humans are sucker for the sense that that there's nothing we couldn't do, because more and more we feel like there's nothing we can do. So you get a guy like Trump who comes along and says, I can do everything better than everyone else. And even though it's just cartoonish, it's superhero cartoonish, people fall for it. Okay, let's see. MK Zip, good to have you back. Let's see, perhaps focusing on what's in it for me and how you can give people superpowers, self-reflection, give people and other techniques to gain viewers. Okay, good. I think what you're saying is that if I could make it, I think what you're saying is if I could make it something that actually has a direct payoff for uh, the viewer. So you're right. Definitely right. So that's an interesting challenge for me to face, because what I'm saying is uh, that I'm inviting people to do a harder thing. And so this is a challenge in this line of work. If I were just serving up candy, like saying, this video that I just made will pay you off directly because it proves that they're dipshits and that you're great. That kind of affirmation is really what sells. And so I'm saying, yeah, irony is a superpower, but I mean that ironically. It's actually not. Um, irony and is irony is where you doubt yourself. Tantrums are more powerful than doubting yourself in a fight. In a fight between someone who is able to doubt themselves and someone who is avoiding doubting themselves, the person who's avoiding doubting themselves will generally do better in a fight. But I do have techniques I could be applying that way. And by the way, I'm grateful for the brainstorming session. Send me any idea you've got, but I also want to make sure to deliver here. So this isn't all about me, okay? So, but here's what I'll say. I am offering you a superpower. And it does come through irony. And it's as simple as this. If you watch what the Trumpists have been doing for the last 30 years easily, they come up with a buzzword, a loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last word, and they proliferate it for a few weeks or for as long as they can get away with it, and then they'll come back to it. So they have a whole vocabulary of this loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last words. And it has fucked up your life because all they have to do is put it out, and people, including us, people get swayed by these loose words. There were some this week. God, I'm trying to think of the ones. It was so obvious this week. If you watch, um, yeah, so they'll scorn some behavior. They'll call it negative. I'll just take the simple example of woke. It's obvious, but woke is loaded by them as bad. Antifa is another example this week. So they flood the airways, and they're very consistent about the word. They're not talking a language. They're just sending out these dog whistles or mating calls. If you feel that woke is bad, then you're on our side, and everybody who's not on our side is woke. You know, in the most obvious way, if I describe this stuff explicitly to you, you know it's bullshit. Woke just means bad, and it refers to anything I don't like. And yet, it still has power over us. I want you to visit, if you can, in a moment, just the last time you were swayed by someone tossing a loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last word at you. I bet you will find one within recent memory, a time when someone persuaded you to do something by shaming you with one of these loaded, load-bearing. Hold on a second. Uh-oh. Just a second. If you close. Just a second. Okay, good. No, I'm just working with new technology and it acted weird. Okay, so those words are how they've won. That's all they've had going on is those words. See MAGA Mike in their feed, or that he is a straw man if you're a punch. Oh, good. Thank you. That's a useful thing. Yes, so the thing about punching down will relate. I'm going to give you a story I wrote today on Facebook. It's a guy saying, don't call people assholes. That locks them in. That makes them sound like they can't change. Don't be a name caller. And I say, well, two things about that. One is you just called me a name caller, which is name calling, as would be calling me a nice guy. Those are both name callings. And I call them assholes to try to get them to change. And the whole point of them being an asshole is they don't want to change. And this person responds by saying, well, don't you know that people never change when you call them names? If you insult people, if you talk down to people, they won't change. And I respond to that by saying, well, you called me a name caller to try to get me to change. And I actually suspect that you're someone who is conflict averse. And for the convenience of it, I don't think you've thought about it that much, but I bet that you simply declare that conflict never works, that is, it's strategically bad, and it's immoral. But that's because you haven't thought about it. And then I say, then the person says, don't tell me how I feel. I know how I feel. And I said, I bet. And you're right. I don't get to tell you how you feel, but I still get to have an opinion about how you feel because obviously we don't always know or want to know how we feel. And I don't see why you or and I are exceptions to that. And they say, oh, don't you play these gotcha games with me? And I say, I take it back. I have a different bet. I think you like conflict a lot, but only when you get to play umpire and always win. I'm playing out an extreme version of a kind of dialogue that I find myself in, perhaps overexposed to it because I live in a liberal part of the country and have a liberal culture I live in. But I am raising questions there about this talking down thing. I agree with the comment about I suspect you may be losing people who are annoyed, embarrassed to see MAGA Mike in the feed, or that he is a straw man you are punching down. Um, yeah, I agree with you. I am losing people that way. And at the same time, I am trying to get us past that sense that that every time you character assassinate, you are using a straw man argument. This is a problem I think we're facing in people who are more adapted to the civilized nature of society a while ago and not the state of society right now. Can you imagine being a Trump supporter? I heard from some this week who are Trump supporters who accuse me of straw man and punching down. These are fans of Donald Trump. So they want to shame me by saying every character assassination is an attack on a straw man. That is, you're exaggerating what's really going on with these Trump people. They are more earnest and heartfelt. They have real thoughts and beliefs, and you're just making them out like a caricature. I don't think so. I don't. I have to be clear about this. I'm going to do a video about people mistake me as a virulently like a radical left liberal anti-Trumpist. That is not what's going on. I mean, no, I loathe the entire movement, but I'm more conservative than Donald Trump. I'm certainly more conservative than and more libertarian. Um, because I actually am paying attention to the tensions that they're ignoring. They're just using conservative like it's a positively loaded, loose, load-bearing last word. They don't actually think about what conservative is. I'm the same way about libertarian. I am a libertarian socialist. I'm a progressive conservative. I would argue you are. I would argue every American citizen is. That the rest is just grandstanding. Obviously, I'm trying to figure out what to loosen and what to tighten. This is always the problem. It's the problem in auto mechanics. It's also the problem in society. I'm not for looseness. I'm not for tightness. I'm for getting the right mix of loose and tight. I'm not for change and I'm not opposed to change. I'm trying to figure out what things to try to change and what things to not try to change. These problems are as old as life. In biology, we call it explore versus exploit. Explore for better solutions. That would be the progressive side of it. Exploit found solutions. Is this the best I could do, or is it worth the effort to investigate whether there's a better way to do it? We're all dealing with that. So I'm not some rabid leftist. I mean, I know I look like one and I definitely sound like one, but that's just my cultural heritage. That's a lifestyle brand residue. And yes, I love my hippie culture I came from. It feels like home to me. The way that church feels like home to some Southern evangelical. I mean, it's just, it's imprinting is all I'm talking about there. But I'm trying to get people to pay attention to the way any of us can become assholes by pretending that what we want to change or what we want to keep the same or what we want to loosen, what we want to tighten, proves that we are all for looseness or all for tightness, all for change, all for non-change, and that we're right about everything. The main point, if I was to give off one gift that was actually a benefit to people immediately, is the moves aren't good or bad. They are moves. And the moves can be good and the moves can be bad. And they're not one or the other. I was talking to a good buddy of mine. We were walking last night, and she has been drawn to some of the Est or The Secret or Byron Katie, this whole approach that says when you are feeling anxious or troubled, reframe the story. Tell the story a different way. It's contextual. Yes, that's what we're talking about. And if you don't get that, they can drag you around by the nose. And so my friend was saying, yeah, yeah, this has been very important to me. It was a very important to me lesson I got from people like Eckhart Tolle and these people, and that if the story isn't one that feels good to you, tell yourself a different story. And because it's all in how you look at it. Okay, so she was saying this, and I said, yeah, well, my problem with these guys is, um, I believe they're half right. They're telling, uh, they're 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 parading a half truth as if it's the whole truth, and and my friend was kind of confused about that, but kind of curious, but also knows that I'm troubled this way. She finds me uncomfortable company sometimes when I do this stuff because I said, well, there are times when I need to change the story, and there's times when I need to face the music. There's nothing intrinsically good about changing the story. After all, the Trumpists do it all the time. And or being here now or reframing things, sometimes you got to face the music and sometimes you don't. And I'm trying to figure out the better times to face the music. I wouldn't want to live by some principle that you should always just change the story, because there are times when I have to face the story. If I don't face the story, I mean, it's basically a celebration of dissociation. And my point is, yeah, I am stuck as a being. I will want to dissociate, and I'm really good at it. I mean, I can always come up with a rationalization for reframing the story in a way that makes me feel more comfortable. That's easy. We all can do that, and I want to do it because I'm not going to pretend I'm a realist. There's nothing more realistic than pretending you're always a realist. Escapism is inescapable for us human beings. I just want to do my escapism right, and there are times when I need to relax myself so I can face a situation, and it's useful for me to reframe a story. I don't want to have a recipe that says every time you're uncomfortable, reframe the story. It's as simple as that, and I swear it'll pay off so well in your life. I mean, it'll actually save you thousands and thousands of dollars and all sorts of grief if you just remember this simple thing about the loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last words. And since I think it's so important, it's so valuable, but so important in my life, I'm going to be very clear about this. Loaded just means that a word sounds like it's a good thing or a bad thing. And so it's almost a rule. If I said that mindfulness, I'm going to take that one. Mindfulness is always, it has positive connotations. I'm simply implying a rule. Always be mindful. Take a word like quitter. It sounds negative, okay? It means you should never quit anything. So it's a loaded word that implies a rule, an always do X rule. It's load bearing in that if in conversation, one of these words comes up like a pedestal or a pillar, you'll want to hop on it. Like, I'm mindful sounds hella good, so I'm gonna hop on top of it. That elevates me. And I was thinking the other day, I like this phrase that Jeremy Bentham came up with, nonsense on stilts. I like it, but it's actually not far enough. What we deal with in society, for example, from the religions and spiritualities and ancient philosophies, is pedestals that we find ourselves born with our feet cemented in. It's not on stilts. Stilts are too fragile. It's like if you were born embedded in a culture like a pole that got embedded in a tree trunk that is now as tall as a redwood. That's what nonsense on stilts is really like. And what we're dealing with when we do this is we're dealing with loaded, load-bearing words. And they're loosely defined. I'll get to that in a second. So the load-bearing part is Christian sounds hella good in most of the world. So people want to plop themselves on top of it. And then they got these other words that are like sunken into the ground. So mindfulness is a word like this, but then for me, MAGA is a down word. It's a nega word. For them, it's a woke would be a nega word. So that would mean that you would put these other people down and elevate yourself on these. That's the loaded, load-bearing part. Once you've elevated yourself with it, you would not want to notice what it actually means. You would not want a definition. So, for example, if I say I'm mindful and I get some I get high off of saying I'm mindful. That is, I'm load bearing my weight on top of that word. Do I actually want a definition of mindful? No. What if it turns out by a definition I wasn't actually mindful? That would be uncomfortable for me. That would be a demotion. It would be like me knocking myself off of this pedestal I'm riding on. And so it's a last word for me. I just say, shut up, I'm mindful. You do that with any of the words. You can do that with quitter. You could do that with these words. If we are not paying attention to the connotations of the words, we are dragged around by the nose by these words. Wow. God, this is such an unusual experience. I mean, here I am sitting alone in my office and just babbling at you people. I hope it makes sense and I hope you say something. So, one of the reasons I need audience is that I don't want to go insane. And I think it's useful for me to have some people around who take a look at it. Okay. They are less likely to change if you placate them. Well, this is really interesting. So I have an academic group that meets every Friday afternoon, and the leader of it is a much more gentle soul than I am, and we've been collaborators for years. This is Terry Deacon's group, and there are these times when I end up playing bad cop in there, and he plays good cop, and I get nervous the morning after. There was actually some of that in the meeting we had last night. Some people brought in a theory, and I didn't see any content in it. And I was blunt enough to say, show me where the content is. You seem to be describing things that we all describe. You just got some fancy words for them. And then this morning I worried about whether or not I was in Terry's good graces because of it. Let's see. So this is just a general point about the current era, the touchy 2020s. We have to be much kinder to each other in this era. Because it's really touchy. Everybody's freaking out, no matter which side of the aisle they're on. They're all freaking out, and things are getting scarce, and people are getting grabby. We also have to be way more honest with each other. How to manage that tension, the narrowing. In a free, loose society, just think about among friends. You can be more blunt. You can be more kind, whatever. You got range, and then you get into intimacy, like in a partnership, and the tolerances tighten. You really can't afford to be too tactful. You have to be honest, and you really can't afford to be too honest, or you'll be in trouble. Obviously, those pairings, that the tightening of opposite pairs, that's what happens in crisis. Is that the tolerances, meaning the engineering sense. I feel like we just came through an era when it was easy to be lots of different ways we could celebrate the diversity. As life gets more crowded, as resources become more scarce, I think there's going to be a tightening. Okay. Ted Nugent's show Spirit Campfire is an hour long of loaded words and MAGA Mike Powell. I have to check out that show. And that's actually one of the arguments I'll make to them, and they can say it's a straw man. I mean, just to understand, I think one of the ways to get beyond the load-bearing words is about. Let's see, I don't see it. So recursion. Going meta is aboutness. So metacognition is thinking about thinking. So it's actually also going up, out, about, up, out. So anything I can do, anything you can do, I can do meta. So Ted Nugent's show Spirit Campfire is an hour-long circle jerk of loaded words. And now I can say that up out of it. That is, I can go meta of it. If I was in the circle jerk, I wouldn't want to see it. But if I step outside of it or am born outside of it, then I can look at it from the outside. I can do that. And then I could do the same thing about it. I could have a Spirit Campfire hour-long show that is anti-Spirit Campfire hour-long show. To give you an example of how this works, um, uh, so there's egotism. And then there are the people who say egotism is beneath me. See that? And then I can say, look at those people who say egotism is beneath me. What a joke. And then someone could do that about me. So that's actually where irony comes from, is this ambiguity about the levels, the aboutnesses. And my main problem with MAGA, I mean, I could talk policy about MAGA, but the main thing that bothers me about MAGA is they just go meta. They'll go to any level where they feel like they're superior. So the amount of egomaniacal declaration, accusation I get from them, straw manning of me as nothing but ego, is amusing. Um, let's see. I have a very hard time thinking of them as equals, but I know I always lose when I feel like I'm better than them. I have to leave my self-righteousness, or if I can remember to, you're onto a very big challenge in this work. I woke you up yesterday and I ended up feeling grubby by about 10 o'clock, and there were a few reasons why. One was that I hung my green screen one time, it fell down. I hung it again. It fell down yesterday morning. Another is that I had an encounter with a Trumpist who scolded me for not treating him with more respect as if I was their equal. And I wrote right back and I wrote him, this was one I was vicious with. There were two yesterday I was very kind with. I invited them on the show and all that, but this was one I decided to savage. It's always this question about whether I'm going to try to humble them or humiliate them, because I need to shake them up, and I have no problem humiliating people who are addicted to this cash cow of ego support and all of this. But I felt grubby. And it's probably the first time in several months that I felt grubby for having insulted this guy. I felt grubby about the computer's issues and the screen falling down and all of that as well. But yeah, they accumulate. I want to watch that stuff. I think you are better than them in a way. I think we are better than the MAGA people. Not better at fighting. They could easily win. Not better at sustaining humankind. I think, let's see, we are better than them at sustaining humankind. But they're better at fighting, and they're worse for society. Those are about their behaviors. Now, about the people, I have to live in a bind about that, which is, I think I'm doing better things than them for society. I think part of what made me uncomfortable yesterday was the sense that they are winning. This has been on my mind lately. There's a paradox there. A toddler who is lousy at fighting, just an immature toddler baby tantrum thrower, if he has an AK-47, is formidable and dangerous. That's what we've got here. And so I'm in a bind about what they are. They're really scary. They could win. I could die from them. My children could die from them. And they are toddlers. They're not smart. They're just powerful. So I ended up framing this up for myself as might makes fright, not right. When someone has got guns or the kind of power and popularity that Trump has, yeah, I'm actually scared. Might makes fright, but it doesn't make right. These guys are toddlers. So yeah, I deal with that grubbiness, and so you've heard me say my version of kindness, the one I would want to live like, is to remember that I'm the same kind as them, that I would do what they're doing if I were in their situation. By definition, that is, if I was born with their temperaments, their opportunities, their aptitudes, their education deprivation, whatever their lack of resources, whatever frustrations, things I have not experienced in my life, I assume that I would be like them, right? Um, so I'm of the same kind, but I also want to savage them. And here's where the bind is a problem, is that, I could say, well, all right, the way to reconcile that is that I won't blame the sinner, I'll just blame the sin. Well, that's easier to do when the sin is limited. If the sin is a character sin, I'm stuck with sympathy for a devil. I'm stuck trying to figure out how to deal with innocent evil. Innocent evil. Think about that concept. What an amazing paradox we're dealing with there. I I don't begrudge. They come by it honestly, even innocently, and it is tearing our country apart. So, um, there is a strategic reason to leave your self-righteousness at the door. Um, when I'm dealing with them, I have to deal with all of these issues, and I cannot resolve it into self-righteousness. And the other thing is that self-righteousness will distract from strategy. And I want to go this far in it. Self-righteousness includes being hopeful or optimistic. Um, we don't recognize this about being hopeful or optimistic. Um, came up in a conversation this week. Um, everybody's hopeful. Everybody's optimistic. Um, everybody's receptive and hoping for a better future, but they're receptive to what they're receptive to, and they're hoping for what they want, and they're optimistic about getting what they want. So there's nothing about that stuff that is unique to our side. And I know people who talk like it is. That we're the ones who are positive and hopeful. And this is where it came up this week. I was talking to a fellow activist of some renown, and she said, "Yeah, I just want to get people to come together. We need to come together. Therefore, I'm going to promote coming together." I said, "You got no you got no margin of advantage over the Trumpists. They want everybody to come together too. What's the difference there? You are intolerant of other people's intolerance. You know exactly where I landed. I landed on the intolerance paradox that Popper brings up. Doesn't generalize it, but it's actually how you trip yourself up on all those load-bearing words. Like take negativity. It sounds bad, right? Do not be negative. Suddenly you recognize, oh, this is an ill-defined term. It's a term that's loaded to sound like it's always bad. Negative sounds bad. No, apparently you got to decide when to be negative and when not to be negative. So anyway, the self-righteousness, think about self-righteousness and its relationship to hope. Um, I'm hoping for the future that I can see, and I want to feel like it's a good possibility that it'll come about. So I'm going to assume that minds are closer to being able to learn to come together the way I want, um, because that would be my hope fulfilled. I've got to give people the benefit of the doubt. Well, what have I done when I say that stuff? Well, I've enjoyed some righteousness. Pe- Um, I've distorted what people's minds are actually like. So that's why I don't want to be self-righteous. I don't want to be hopeful. I want to or hopeless. I'm not interested in those two things when I'm trying to figure out how to talk to a Trumpist. I'm trying to be strategic. I have to be paying attention to what their mind is really like, what their mind is really doing, not what I hope it's doing or what would be good if it was doing. And so that's why to be strategic, you got to drop the hope stuff. And you got to also come away. I was thinking about this the other day. Boy, thank you guys for listening. I hope I make sense. I am out. I'm 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 running things out here. Trumpists walk away uh, from arguments claiming victory. I get this all the time from them. the Trump trolls. They come online. They're not actually interested in conversation. They say their piece, and whatever I say in response, they don't have usually a response back. They don't come back with anything. I was just one scornography video they watched, and they moved on to other scorno, right? I just coined the term scorno. I think it's a good one. Scorno. So they've moved on to other scorno videos. So they're not there, but I do know from the encounters I have with them that they really do claim victory when they leave. We do it too, and I don't want to do it. I don't want um, to walk away saying pearls before swine. I actually have to try and figure out who these guys are, what's going on in their mind. I have to be very empathic and compassionate. I have to put myself in their shoes and remember when they were my shoes so I can really relate to them. And I don't want to just say, well, we should all come together under my view of the world. And if you don't, you're a failure or a loser. Okay. So negative evil, I don't know what you mean by that. It's a combination of two words. Evil already implies negative. Negative is a hard one because it's already kind of intrinsically meta. So do not be negative is where you would find the equivalent to be intolerant of intolerance. Take a word like judgment. It's the same sort of issue. Judgment, you shouldn't be judgmental. Judgmental sounds bad. We don't get around to defining it. We then often go into an apples and orange bullshit game, which is, well, you shouldn't be judgmental, but you should be discerning. So that's the apples and orange move. I get this a lot. So look for this. This is another place where you escape back into the loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last words. You say, kindness is the answer. And shame on you. You go meta and you say, shame on you for not being kind. Okay. And then someone says, well, did you see what you just did there? You were unkind to me about my unkindness. And you say, no, that wasn't me being unkind. It's a completely different thing. That's apples and oranges. What I was doing was instructing you on the right way to behave. That's not unkindness. So we don't want to play that game either. I assume that any move in the human repertoire can be described in three languages: positivese, negativese, and neutralese. So just to take one example, and you could do this, you could have a dictionary of these things, and I think that all an asshole needs is a dictionary that translates from positivese to negativese. You could have a douche bot. You could have an asshole or a hero bot machine that simply has two lists. And so I'll just give you an example. Quitter sounds bad, or so you just quit in that context. I quit smoking is different, but you're just going to quit sounds negative. I freed myself from, that sounds positive. Leaving something that you were already in, that you've been in, is neutral. So we have, that's not the best example of it, but let's say discerning sounds good. Being judgmental sounds bad. Having an opinion about the value of something sounds neutral. So I'm discerning, you're judgmental. This stuff is so obvious. I feel embarrassed about bringing it up, and yet I don't think we have it in our bones. And until we do, it's really hard to deal with these issues. So all you would need to be a Trumpist or any kind of asshole is, when I do it, I use the positive term about it. When you do it, I use the negative term about it. And there are apples and oranges. They're completely different. You never get around to defining them. The definition is just, if I do it, it's good. If you do it, it's bad. I just sent you an email that was just a little too long to write here. I think it may have a good point, but I would like to hear your reaction. Kyle, we need a conversation anyway. We didn't get around to it this week. I'm free tomorrow and some this afternoon as well. I'm also pleased to report, almost proud to report, that this 69-year-old was invited to uh, a party, not as a guest or as a senior guest, but as a peer among a few 30-year-olds I know. It's fabulous cultural experience. It's a pool party. I probably won't be dressing all the way down. I don't want to gross people out too much. But uh, but yes, I'm hanging out with people of your generation. I want to learn what's coming next because we're on our way out. I have many activist friends who simply declare themselves retired. Um, okay. All right. Let's see. All right. We've been going for 45 minutes. The camera still works. We've got more people in this meeting than we usually do. Thank you for being here. I'm sure it's the production values. I'm amazed. I got this camera working. Um, there is something called learned helplessness, and I've had some of that around camera technology where I just don't think I'll ever get it working right because I haven't so far. Um, I bring that up because I think there may be that possibility. I wouldn't want to rest on it, but there is that possibility with the Trumpists. It may be that at some point the tables turn. This is the when we get to the find out portion of FAFO. Um, I don't want to rest my hopes on that because I don't want to distort my expectation of what's actually how strong this movement is. There is an article of faith we've had in the United States, which is that we've gotten this far out many times, but we always bounce back. You could also say that about humankind. People have gotten very close to the edge. Humankind has gotten very close to the edge. There was a time when there were only 600 humans left? I think so. 600 or 700 humans left in the world. This is fairly late in our evolution, and yet we came back from that. But you just don't get to say we always bounce back. Trauma of our society and how it's being used to stoke the dissonance. Good. Yes. You 30 years ago, I coined the excessive bumper sticker that democracies die when leaders so powerful they don't have to doubt lead people so traumatized they can't afford to doubt. And that 30 years ago I came up with that, and I think that that's what's going on. This is also related to my point right here, which is when the going gets this tough, we tend to rely more on those world distorting load bearing terms. They're how we dissociate, and that only makes things worse and makes us dissociate more. So let's talk about that for a minute. And this is personal, and it's about your personal experience, not mine so much. Um, yeah, I have my stresses, but they're relatively minor. Because as I said, I'm an inheritor. I've been lucky, and I'm not as stressed as people who are, for example, still out in the job market or carrying partners or children in this current era. The stresses must be overwhelming for you and for others. I was talking to a good buddy of mine who's about my age, and we're just talking through um, his personal experience. He's got children who are having challenges, and how in this era he thinks less and less about the big picture and more about covering his own people. That's what we would expect from situations like this. Um, there's a dream from those who have a misguided understanding of human minds, grounded in or ungrounded by hope and aspiration, that when things get tough worldwide, we sober up and become more collective. There's a kind of evidence for it that we see in a local crisis. Let's say there's a flood and everybody comes together. Um, so maybe there's something to it, but it doesn't seem very sustained. For example, I read a book on the psychology of climate change, and in it, it argued that whenever there is a uh, uh, climate crisis, an event like a hurricane People come together, but you are not allowed to talk about climate change. And whether that's true or whether that was just a product of this one study, I wouldn't know. But I do know that this is not the time or place is a popular move. You'll get it a lot from the Trumpists, for example, after um, the trauma of uh, a mass shooting. This is not the time or place to go global. We don't want to think about the global issue. We are going to pay attention to the immediate suffering around us. And while that's a clever move they use to keep the NRA satisfied, it's also something that resonates with humans. When things get rough, the big picture is harder to look at, though it is easier to claim. Claim that you're looking at it, claim that you've got the big picture, but what's really doing is you shrink down into your protecting you and yours. It just seems so unbelievably human that we would go back to this kind of animal primacy of us and ours and would do it with loaded language about the big picture. So instead of actually looking at what is the real source of their trauma. Yes, so this is threat displacement. And I think it's very natural. You'll notice that the Trumpists, everything that they claim to care about so much that it trumps all other considerations, is stuff that doesn't call upon them to change anything. They just have to have a strong opinion about what other people are doing. And it can be grounded in nothing but their appetite for scornography. So they scorn other people. The problem in the world is LGBT bathrooms or gay rights or abortion. And yeah, so that's just threat displacement. You can't get them to talk about real threats. And this is also why they're such candy asses, even though they've got guns and they scare me. Yes, thank you for sticking with these paradoxical views of what's going on with us all. I mean, innocent evil and toddlers with firearms. I mean, it's just these are challenging times that really. I mean, at least I said this week. Even if civilization is going down, I just want to do my best to understand how. I really want to understand what it is about us that does this. And I don't want to be finger pointing. I want to be looking at the humans we are and how we would be prone this way. I do think there are things about supernatural and right-wing views that make being an asshole especially easy. Though as someone who travels in broad circles, I can say I've seen the same behavior from any perspective. There are atheists who pull off the same stuff. I'm an atheist, but there are differences in how one could be. All I'm saying is that it doesn't matter the cause or any of that. This is human stuff. So yeah, I really want to understand what it is about humans. And as you know, the general approach that I take to that is that humans have language. And technology is certainly a big part of it, but the language thing really throws us off because we live in two worlds, and one of them makes us extremely anxious because we have language and we can imagine all the things in the real world that could bother us. And then we have the other one where we also can imagine all sorts of fantasy things that could harm us. And so we are an uncommonly anxious species. And as a result, we are also, with language, very good at reassuring ourselves. So while frogs do jump out of boiling water, humans don't, because we can rationalize staying in the water. We are, as Ernest Becker describes us, we are gods with anuses. We are grounded, tethered in the physical world, and yet we can go off into these abstractions and imagine it infinite, like infinite good, and we can see where we fall short. So all of that stuff makes it so I would have predicted Not that I'm smart, but just that if you follow that logic out, you would end up with the dissociation death spiral as a likely outcome for humankind, especially when the technology enables us to be up in our faces as much as the communication technology now enables us to be. So I would have predicted it. I think I was too hopeful to imagine it was coming this quickly. Um, I want to say something about that and draw a personal parallel. I used to warn in my marriage. I was only married once. I used to warn that if we didn't get better at communicating with each other, we were on the verge of divorce. She was the one who called it and said, "I think we need a divorce," and I was kind of shocked. I mean, I talked about it more than that, but in the abstract, and I didn't really imagine that it would come to pass. I was kind of thought it was inconceivable at the time. So I'm drawing a parallel there between that and I've been thinking about and warning about the dissociation death spiral, the thing I just described, where with language, we can check out of reality. And when we do, we neglect reality and then we check out more and more of that. I've been warning about that for a long time, the same way that in my marriage, I was warning about we could end up divorced if we don't watch out. But when it actually is upon us, I wasn't really ready for this Trump thing. I didn't expect it was going to happen this soon. I thought it was coming soon. I think I'm probably the same way about climate change. I know it's coming soon. 6 years ago, a friend was talking about how the tipping point. This is a guy who works full time on climate change, as coming in 6 years. Okay, well, here we are. I bet we will all be surprised by it. And this is the thing about even the abstractions of foresight. I can see that there's a problem coming, and I'll still be surprised when it arrives. We humans. Okay, let's see. On an elliptical right now. Okay, limited light. That might explain why your light is limited here, but also I'm talking about ellipses. In a way, ellipses are an interesting form. They do have an acceleration and deceleration phase within them. They're important in music. If I'm playing with a musician who counts in a circle that's just equal like this, like one, first of all, there's people who go like this 1, 2, 3. That doesn't work for jazz. And then if you got a circle, it doesn't include the loping part, the elliptical part. There's something about the ellipse, the fits and starts, the stop and go-ness of an ellipse that is so deep. Yeah, it blows my mind when someone nails it. I watched the documentary about Sly Stone the other day, and yeah, that guy's he did what Louis Armstrong did, and with as much success, unfortunately, which is he brought everybody together through animal rhythm, what we all have going on in ourselves, and the rhythm is largely about an elliptical sound. It's a sense of resistance and acceleration to acceleration. Anyway, um, look, that's a game we could play. You bring up a topic, and I'll do something with it. Probably abuse it. Anybody got anything else? We can move on to something else. Also, yeah, we could also end early, but I want to see if anybody's got anything else they want to talk about. Para, beside, near. Yeah, surely. Yeah, there are interesting. Yeah, let me try something about this. Paradox is a useful term. Um, live and breathe that stuff, but here's something to wax about for a minute or two. I think the word paradox needs to be split into two things. And I'll explain why, and also I'll explain why from the origins of life forward. So paradox is when you've got two contrary ideas and they create what we call an undecidable. That is, you go meta and you say, look at this, they're contradictory. So the liar's paradox, which is basically, it's true that I'm lying, where the first part of it flips the second part of it, and the second part of it flips the first part of it. So it's true if it's false, and it's false if it's true. That's a paradox. but it's actually made of a contradox, two ideas that are counter to each other. They're two like orthodox. So doxy is kind of idea or belief, I think. Um, and so if you've got two of them and they are counter each other, the higher level emerges from it. The way okay, so I think we need to distinguish those aspects of it better than we do. The problem with paradoxes and going meta is it's easy to get lost. Your orientation gets thrown off. What are we talking about? And what I'm saying echoes what we see in the physical world. And I'm going to go there, talk about this as the issue with the origins of life, which I'm getting to in this series called Ironies of Truest Medicine. So in nature, at the most fundamental level, there are flows. There are, you call them grades. So something is graded. It's falling in this direction. It's falling, so you've got a orthograde. It's moving in some direction. And this is true at the molecular level, but it's also true of water. It's true of heat. And you could say the most fundamental tendency or flow in the universe is towards disorder, or heat flows towards diffusion. So that's your primary flow, and I have to build everything out of it. Well, the other thing that we're starting from is that there are these flows, and I'm going to start with that one is the most important one. It's the one that's most universal, which is whenever you got a concentration, it will dissipate. It will flow towards dissipation. Okay, but these are local and temporal, and sometimes you get two flows that are flowing against each other. And what does that do when you got two flows that are flowing against each other? This is like a contradox, but I'm talking strictly physics. There's no ideas yet. I just got physical flows that are flowing towards each other. Well, you get new constraints, new limitations from the two contragrade flows. So if you have water flowing from two sources towards each other, they are limiting each other's flows. So if you take that up to the level of chemical reactions, you can get the flows where you get a flow towards a chain reaction is a kind of flow. It's making more of a certain kind of molecule. And then you got to get a flow going the other direction, and you can end up with these counter flows. I'm amazed that there are still 21 people here as I babble about these abstractions. What I want to say, because I don't want to lose you guys, but if you look at the origins of us, here's what I'm going to suggest we are. We're a chain reaction that happens to produce as a side effect these chain reaction seeds. And what this is you got a flow, a chain reaction, that as a side product is producing these molecules that tend to form crystals or shells. They crystal shells. They simply fall towards shell-likeness. So in the middle of this chain reaction where there's a flow towards the production of more certain kind of chemical species, you can end up capturing some of them inside of these shells, not because it's trying, and you end up with these shells that could carry the chain reaction molecules off someplace else where they might start another chain reaction. That's, believe it or not, where I think the origins of me starts. And what is that? It's two processes that are producing a higher level constraint. So the chain reaction is it's a flow, and the self-assembly or the crystal formation, the shell formation is a flow, and out of the two flows comes a higher level orthograde, a higher level tendency. This is a tendency to keep that process going. It's basically an alternation between chain reaction and closed in seed formation. So it alternates between two forms. I got to start that simple, and it still sounds too complicated, but the way we think about it at the physical level is that a higher level orthograde, a flow, can emerge from lower level contragrades, flows against. Simple example that isn't coming alive, boy oh boy, is that when you got water that's flowing against each other, it can result in a higher level spiral formation of flow. Okay. So, boy, uh, all I want to get to is paradox is beside, near, or beyond. So I'm saying pay attention to the contradoxes that yield the paradoxes. If you surely, if you and I got in an argument and we sustained it for a minute, we could then label that contradox interaction as an argument. That is, we could step beside it or beyond it or near it and say, why are we having this argument? That's all I'm talking about, which is that if you've got two forces that are reliably or consistently against each other, it yields a higher level thing. And so, God, you thank you guys for letting me talk like this, but I hope it doesn't drive you crazy. Or, but what I'm saying is, if you want to understand emergence, you got to get concrete about it, and that's how to do it. That's what I'm saying is where it starts. Higher level form or tendencies or flows can emerge from lower level counters or counterflows. Higher level flows can emerge from lower level counterflows, all the way into the creation of life. That is, the emergence of life is not something added to chemistry. It's a way in which, when you've got some flows that are flowing against each other, you end up with this overarching flow that limits it failing. That's the beginning of life, is when you've got a chemical system that prevents itself from simply dissipating. That's when you've got a self and trying. A whirlpool doesn't prevent itself from failing, but an organism at its absolute simplest would. And emergence is a word that sounds positive and is very vaguely defined in science. And we're trying to be very clear about the physical process of emergence. And all the way up from the origins of life from chemistry to the kind of what emerges with Trumpists. So notice how they do that. They have this whole self-perpetuating myth. Set aside whether it's a myth. I'm calling it a symboloma, a cancer of the symbols, a highly aggressive, highly invasive symboloma. With language, they have created this coherent model where everything agrees with everything. It's completely coherent. It doesn't have to have any relationship to reality other than people are drawn to it. People are asshole magnets. They want to be drawn to something as complete and absolute as it, where all the checks are in balance and they can give it a positive name like MAGA, and then everybody's part of it and everybody gets to say, everybody, who's part of it feels like a winner all the time because everything's in check. It's like a organism in this respect. It's not really an organism, not a super organism, but boy, is it a juggernaut. And boy, is it gonna fuck us up. So that's what I'm paying attention is to these emergent higher level things. Emergence sounds good, but disastrous things can emerge. And the way they maintain themselves is the good thing or the bad thing. So for a while, we thought that democracy was an emergent phenomena that was very sustainable. When I was growing up, the the liberal society had just beat fascists. And now I have doubts about whether it's actually it can beat that. I only play an epimagologist on TV. That's certainly true of me. No, I play it outside as well. But anyway, we talk about connection, we talk about love, we talk about unity, and I'm trying to sober us up about those positive sounding words. There's nothing inherently good about love. There's nothing inherently good about connection. There's unity is not a good thing inherently. It all depends on what you're unifying and what and where you point those things. Unity for what? If I wish it wasn't so hard for us to remember this, but we seem to be like deer in the headlights when someone uses a loaded term on us. Like, don't you want connection? Don't you want unity? The Trumpists say to us, come on. It's how you stop thinking, is you just resolve to one of these loaded, load-bearing terms. I got that from a Trumpist the other day. He was saying, yeah, I really don't like either of the parties, and but then I found this one statement, which is that I paid more taxes under Biden than I do than from Trump. That's and so that's why I voted Trump. So that's not a particularly positive statement. He could have stated it like that. Trump gives more money back to the people than Biden did. That's why I voted Trump. Gives more money back to the people. You just all I'm talking about is euphemism and loaded language, pejoratives, and all of this. Fox weather is on the campus. Weather is on the campus gym for several months. Become about weather and real estate concerns. Ironic. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, you're on the elliptical. Got it. We're getting a report from the front lines, and Fox News is on, Fox Weather, all that sort of stuff. Okay, let me see if we've got anything else, because I've been brain dumping at a fine clip here, and with finer video than ever before. Look at me. Look at this thing dance. Okay, anybody got anything else? Anybody else? Let's see. We're going once, going twice, because we covered a lot here, or touched on a lot. Anybody got anything else? Well, rather than going on and on, let me think if there's anything else on my mind right now. No, let me just say, I'm delighted. More people stuck around for longer than usual. I wish I had more to say. I've taken on a lot of projects, and then I stalled myself while trying to get my camera stuff upgraded. But I am going to be doing how to not suck at fighting. One of the challenges I'm dealing with is that apparently suck is a word that discourages viewers because it sounds potentially sexual. And yet I think that's the right name for it, how to not suck at fighting. So there's that. And I also want to make sure to... I want to keep the Irony is the Truest Medicine video series going. I'm a little sprawled right now. And if anybody has ideas about what is the most promising direction for me to go with these videos, please let me know. It may be that some paths will become harder. For example, if the Trumpists are cracking down the way they're talking about cracking down on liberal media, there are things I have said in the last while that could have gotten me in trouble if I was a bigger name. And like I was talking about the prospect of divorce, I don't know how soon it will become hard to do what we do in challenging the Trumpists. I would say that this is one of the interesting paradoxes I'm dealing with, or on the one hand, on the other hand. On the one hand, the United States is not used to this degree of fascism. On the other hand, we're deer in the headlights. We have never had to fight for our democracy the way we are currently. Did we have to fight in World War II? First of all, it wasn't us. We inherited the heroism of that without actually having to do any of the fighting. And no, it wasn't on our own ground. It wasn't foxes in the hen house. It wasn't these sheep in wolves' clothing, these toddlers in flak jackets. And they weren't our own. It was easier to distinguish who was on our side and who wasn't. I do think it's amusing, the possibility that all of my MAGA might stuff might save my life if they ever came after Berkeley, and they are coming after the university now. And this is a perfect town. I mean, this is the poster child for wokeness, this town, even though if you walk the streets, it doesn't feel like that. But anyway, if they ever come after this town, I just have to don my MAGA Mike stuff and walk down the street. I'd get out of here safely. No, I wouldn't. Anyway. All right. I'm going to leave it at that, my brothers and sisters. Thank you guys for being here, and I will be back next week. I do get around to putting up the ad for this thing a little late. Just assume I'm on every week, but I will try to put them on earlier in case that actually increases my audience. And like I said, get in touch with me about anything. Get in touch if you want to join the study group. It's not meeting tomorrow, it meets the Sunday after. The study group on how to deal with the Trumpists, how to talk to people, how to engage with people there's no talking to. That's still going on. Get in touch with me about any issues. And if you've got any suggestions for me about how to do my work more effectively, more efficiently, with greater traction among the viewers, let me know. And enjoy this week your share of scorno. That new term I just coined for scornography. That is, let us enjoy reveling in the horrific news about what douchebags and humans these douchebags are as a way of feeling superhuman. I love that feeling. I love to feel like, God, these guys are so dumb. Their egotism is beneath me. But careful. Don't just rest on that stuff. Don't rest on your laurels for not being a douchebag like them. Um, Keep on thinking it up. We are not there yet. We don't have the toolkit we need, never did have the toolkit to deal with movements, symbolomas like the Trumpists. I really welcome your ideas about things we should try that we haven't tried. Um, and also ideas about what's really going on that we haven't noticed yet. Like, even if we're going down, I really want to understand how. Okay. All right. Thank you guys. See you guys next time.